Thank you for all coming out. This is a Let's Talk Alberta sponsored event, and the name says it all. We're here to talk about the issues that are facing Alberta right now, and we have an evening of 5 speakers tonight, and so they will bring short presentations, and then after, you'll get a chance to talk, because we'll invite you to bring your questions, your comments, your ideas, and that will be in the second part of tonight's goings-on. Before we start, I have to just get through a few housekeeping issues. There are washrooms when you go out the main doors that you came in, and there are emergency exits both sides of the hall to the back and also to the front here. If you haven't yet, please help yourself to some refreshments. We have merchandise tables at the back. I've been saying that sometimes it's very hard to get a conversation going, but if you go and buy a t-shirt or a hoodie and you wear it, you probably will be able to get a conversation going. So please go and visit those tables. There's also a sign-up table. I think most of you have already done that, but if you haven't, please go to the back. Just give us your name and the town that you're in so that when we come back in your area, we'll be able to send you either an email or a text, whatever your choice is, and let you know that we're coming back. The hall looks like we had great expectations here tonight, and we do, and we're thankful that you've all come. But there is going to be a big event here tomorrow, and they're expecting most of the town to be here, and that's why there's so many chairs that have been placed out here. How the evening goes is the first part starts with presentations from our speakers. Then we will have a short break, and then we will go into the question and answer period. What we'd ask is that during the time that the speakers are speaking, that you would hold your comments, hold your questions, because you'll be given ample time at the end to speak your mind, because that's what we're here about. Let's talk Alberta. How many of you tonight have never attended an APP event, not an APP, a Let's Talk Alberta event or an independence event? Oh, wow. Well, welcome. We hope that when you leave here tonight, you'll feel that your time was valuable and that you'll leave and you'll have some facts under your belt, and that when the referendum comes in October, you will be able to make an informed decision, whichever way you choose, but that you'll have some facts to back it up. Traditionally, we always open our meetings with prayer, so I'm going to ask Patty Vold to come to the podium. Patty, in my opinion, knows everybody in Alberta, and so if you don't know her yet, just talk to her later. I'm sure you will find out that you either know her, you know her family, or you might find out you are her family. So anyway, getting back to what's serious, Patty, if you wouldn't mind opening in prayer.
I will. Father, we invite you here tonight. We know this is your country, and you have invited us to be stewards of it. So, Lord, help us to be good stewards of this land, this country, this province of Alberta, and all the surrounding towns and that we all live in. We thank you for bringing us all here tonight. Lord, we ask that you bless the speakers. Fill their hearts and minds with the words that you would want them to use. And we thank you, Lord, for just being here. In Jesus' name, amen. I have a little God thing today. I had a friend call me. I didn't want to call her. I didn't want to be, intrusive. And she called me, and she said, "Can I help you?" And I just went, "Oh, man, thank you." So that was just because I hadn't asked her. So, and yes, I do know some people in the front row here.
Thank you, Patty. I get to go to a lot of events, and I find that such a blessing to be able to participate. And so I'm starting to get to know some of the speakers. And I have the opportunity and the privilege tonight to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Ben Crane, who is a singer, a musician, a comedian, an artist, a cartoonist, and a really, really good guy. And so, Mr. Ben Crane.
I'm not sure who she was talking about. How are you, neighbors? I feel like I know about 3/4 of you, because I was raised just down the street just a bit, that way. Normally I speak about values because we got a whole bunch of guys on this tour who are so much smarter than me, and they know things. We got political scientists, we got lawyers, we got, economists, people who actually know stuff, and me. But I do have my spidey senses well tuned to values, and I don't know why, but I've always felt that that's basic building blocks of life. I really believe that. And normally that's what I talk about, but the other day I was reading some stuff, and there's a gentleman by the last name of Haskell that has just written a book about civilization. Juno was covering it. And a question that he posed really hit I got a brain cell on this side and one on this side, and every once in a while they meet, and there's a spark and lots of smoke and a big noise, and I get a thought. And this thought hit me. It was a question: can a civilization survive after rejecting the values that built it? And that's what I want to talk about tonight. I'm no expert in the legal ramifications of independence. We've got other speakers on this tour that have a far better understanding of that. But I do savvy values, identity, and respect. And I can tell when they're not employed. There's a certain smell. I see only two options here: remain tied to a country that seems hell-bent on self-destruction, or pull away and chart a new course of self-preservation. That's the simple truth, in my opinion. And it seems to me that the country that we love so dearly has borrowed and thrived on the benefits of such values as trust and honesty, integrity, hard work, peace, all given to us by our Creator, the very values that we've built our country on right from the beginning. And all the while enjoying and borrowing those values, it is systemically rejecting those same values. It's really bizarre to me. It's two-faced. It's a double-minded person, and we know that they're stable in pretty much every way. You can't reject something on one hand that you're embracing on the other. You can't embrace the intrinsic value and respect of a person while at the same time exerting control and surveillance over them with a tyrannical hand. You can't embrace freedom of speech while freezing bank accounts and imprisoning those who hold a differing opinion than the permitted national narrative. You can't allow the forever side to voice their opinion, fly their flag, and be heralded as patriots, while at the same time prohibiting the independent side to voice our opinion and fly our flag, and fling all manner of vitriol and legal threats against us. I'm using words that I've paid for. I don't know what they mean, but I sure impressed myself. Oh, boy. You cannot embrace honesty and truth while at the same time making backroom deals and promises that you never intend to keep, all in the name of getting and staying elected. You cannot embrace the ethics of hard work and personal responsibility, remember those, while at the same time overtaxing the very people whose work has built the country and are trying to maintain it. You cannot embrace the value of peace while aligning yourself with countries with deplorable human rights violations. And at the risk of sounding like Chicken Little, we're on the brink of a societal collapse. So what kind of country do you want when you think about it? I believe that our honorable colleagues on the opposing side of this debate actually kind of want the same things we do, to the most part. They want to be proud of our country. I love Canada. I don't want to leave. I really do. To honor the vets who have fought and died for our values and our identity, they want the same thing. We both want to have a safe place to live and raise our children the way we want to raise them. We both want freedom to be ourselves and to thrive, to work without being controlled and censored. We both want to be free to hold and voice our own opinions, practice our own faith. We want our vote to actually count west of the Ontario border. We want fiscally responsible government. I guess maybe the difference is we want small government, but moral integrity. We share so many common goals, even though we disagree on how to achieve them. And I believe we have to realize that unity is not sameness. That's been redefined. Unity is actually making the intentional decision to work together towards the same goal, in spite of and even embracing our differences. So to answer that question I posed at the front, I do not believe that a country can survive after rejecting the values that it was built upon. We've gone so far, I believe that there's no turning back. And that's why I'm fighting for independence. I'm fighting for my life, for my family, for my children, my grandchildren, my neighbors, and for you. They've changed values. I haven't. And I don't believe I'm the only toad in this here puddle. This kind of change isn't going to be easy. So many people say, oh, all you got to do is this, and then everything will be just fine. No. The road ahead will be full of potholes and obstacles, hardships. But the alternative is not an option. There's no future here. A move forward is risky, always is. It's uncertain. A lot of questions we don't have all the answers to. But think of the pioneers. They were faced with the same scenario. They knew what they were leaving. They didn't know where they were going. But to move forwards toward a future or to stay put and wither. We have very intelligent folks working out the scenarios, and I do want to throw some hope at you, because that's what this is all about. We do have people who are actually working on the scenarios at this moment. They plan to roll them out to us in the not too distant future, and I will gladly hitch my wagon to that team, because I've seen how the current team is pulling, and I ain't comfortable that close to the cliff. Later on, I've written a couple songs. I'm going to sing them in the intermission. These are songs that were, I writ them thinking about the things that I'm learning, and we've really been enjoying doing that. But in the meantime, we are going to get the next feller up here. He really honestly needs no introduction. Cory Morgan, you know him from the Western Standard. He's just become a registered third-party advertiser and has been going all over the place with all kinds of cool things. He's got podcasts. I really enjoy listening to him because this is probably about the levelest head that's out there. I don't know if Cory, does anything make you mad, Cory? If it does, I haven't seen it yet. And I've been really, really pleased to become a friend of his. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cory Morgan.
All right, well, thank you all for coming out on a mostly nice spring night. It's beautiful out there. And I love every excuse to be able to come out to places like this and speak. We're making history right now. We really are. We've never seen it like this. I mean, we don't have a straight path to independence. We don't have an easy one, but you know what? We never did. And we're farther along towards it than we ever have been in Alberta history. And I see a few folks here who are like me, a little past 30. So we remember some of the prior independence movements and how they came and went and came and went. But something's been different this last year. It's just come in and it's just sustained. It's stayed. In fact, it's growing. And now we're in for 4 months of discussion about our place in the Federation like we've never had before. The whole country is finally paying attention. They're paying attention about 50 years too late, but at least they're paying attention now. And this isn't a movement to try and get attention. Some people say that, oh, it's just those Albertans having another tantrum. No, we're well past the tantrum stage. We're grown up and we want to move out of the house. And so we didn't, again, as with that curving path, I mean, we knew the Federalists, the establishment, the Laurentians, they weren't going to make it easy. They weren't going to let us just simply jump straight out. And we've seen that now with the courts. We're seeing it now with the pushback from legacy media. They even dug old Jean Chrétien up to tell us how much it's important for Alberta to keep pouring the money into Canada without thanks. And it's not going to work. But we got a lot to do. We have a lot to do. We're seeing the tone of the campaign already. And we saw that for those of us who were able to watch Jason Kenney's debate with Keith Wilson. And Keith attacked, if you'd call it that, it was a good civil debate, but he came from it with the facts, with the stats, with the numbers. We have that case in our pocket. It's pretty simple. No honest economist can look at the situation of Alberta and the Federation and say that this is a fair and tolerable system. That's just not there. Sorry, guys. We're better off on our own as far as it comes economically. When it comes to the rights, that's something I think in the culture the people in the East don't understand, because there is a distinct Alberta culture. And that culture can be imported. Some of our best Albertans came from other provinces, came from other countries. Alberta is an attitude. It's a way of life. It's a way of thinking. They don't understand it, and I don't care. I'm not here to try and make them understand it. Our job is to make the rest of us understand that we're better off on our own. And we've got a lot of people to convince. So when we got that factual case in our pocket, we've got that set, as we saw with Keith Wilson. How did Jason Kenney respond? 2 things, fear and emotion. And most of his case, most of his debate was fear-mongering. It's going to be a hellscape. It's going to be terrible. It'll be an apocalypse. Alberta would be in an awful condition without dear Canada clinging to it like a giant wood tick. And he also went for the tired old trope of Memorial Drive and the veterans and the people who sacrificed and the people who fought in the past. And it's not fully a trope, but it doesn't mean that an independent Alberta is not revering the memory of those people who did all that fighting and sacrificing for it. In fact, it's bringing it forward. They happened to be fighting under the banner of Canada when they did that. But they were fighting for freedom, not a particular country. And we're enjoying that. And I will go to my grave respecting and thanking and valuing what all those veterans did for me and for us, my family, and what we're enjoying today. This isn't about trying to tear out history. Who's trying to tear out history? Actually, it's the Laurentians, the ones tearing down John A. Macdonald's statue, the ones who are saying we're genocidal jerks, the ones who are saying we should stare at our shoes for being part of this country because we're such shameful colonial monsters that we don't deserve it. By the way, I'd like to acknowledge we are on forever ceded land as per the treaties. I follow contracts. It's about time the First Nations did too. But what did the Laurentians expect on what was a 10-year campaign, a 20-year campaign of telling us that this isn't a good country, that this isn't a place to be proud of, that this isn't a place with a history we're supposed to be happy with? Did they think that was going to build unity? Of course not. So don't blame us, guys, when you said this is a terrible place and we finally said, okay, we agree, we're going to change it, we're moving out. You brought it on, guys. But that emotional case, we've got to move a lot of pencils to a positive vote on this garbled word salad of a question we got on October 19th. Because even though it's not a binding referendum, it is definitely a de facto independence referendum. If we don't come out, if we don't campaign, if we don't convince people to get out and make their mark on that, and it comes in at 15, 20%, we will be dismissed after that. They will say, you see, there's nothing here, there's no movement, and you know what, we're going to have a hard time convincing more Albertans that there is. So that's why we've got to organize and take this seriously and work on this campaign. And the hardest case we got to work against is that sentimental case and the fear case. Jason Kenney is a very smart man. He's a very good communicator. He's a very skilled politician. The reason he went for those is because he knows they work. It doesn't matter if a person's reason for voting to maintain the federation was purely emotional. It doesn't matter because the vote was still to remain. So we've lost that vote. So we've got to come to things one-on-one with people. We've got to talk to them. This isn't something we can win with a flyer. This isn't something we can win with a glitzy advertising campaign or well-spoken politicians. This takes personal conversations from Albertan to Albertan, so they do understand. We're not trying to ruin something, we're trying to build something. We're not trying to crap on the memory of people prior to us. In fact, we're trying to evolve forward. Countries change, they evolve, borders move. Most often they actually get smaller because they do realize that centralized systems don't work out that well. We don't have a problem with Canada. We don't have a problem with Canadians. We don't have a problem with the flag, but we have a problem with a broken system that will never serve us and is impossible to fix under the Canadian system. But who would change an emotional person who's, sentimentally clinging to that notion of Canada? Well, the best set person to do that is you. It's one-on-one conversations. That's who we trust the most. A friend, a family member, a coworker, somebody who just sits next to you at the bar all the time. They could be the ones you could talk to. And these conversations can take time. They can take multiple conversations, multiple hits. Those who are coming out tonight, I know most of you are already well educated on the issues. And again, that's those facts and figures we have. And they're important because we've got to answer those questions. The number one way to get somebody who's sitting on the fence, there's 30% of the people out there, they're never going to support independence. That's okay. That's life. That's democracy. Don't waste your energy on them. Talk about sports or something. It's not worth a fight. Identify that 30% that could go either way and talk to them. And the best way to convince somebody to start moving over and be receptive to a discussion, ask them questions. That's the way to get to it. And I know that's hard for me. I'm a belligerent, know-it-all blowhard. I'm a media guy. I'm always telling, I'm always talking. But you know what? When I want to convince people actually with a conversation one-on-one, we have to train ourselves to do that. We're in campaign mode. And to reach people, ask them what their concern is, because they have them. And they're genuine. Even if you don't share that concern, their concern is genuine. Be respectful of it. And with enough talk and enough thinking, most often, their concerns, whatever it might be with the country, tend to lead them to independence anyway. There's not much avoiding that, but you've got to let them come to that conclusion. That's how you convert somebody. That's how you work toward discussion back and forth. Some people say it's kind of sneaky. I use the analogy, but it's true. And I know Derek never watches my stuff when I do it anyway, so that's fine. But you might have had one of those bosses who are like that. You've got an idea, but if you go storming into the boss's office and say, I got this brilliant idea, he'll say, yeah, get out of here. I don't have time for it. But if you talk to him long enough and talk around it until he thinks it's his idea, suddenly it's the best idea in the world and we're going to get right on that. Similar sort of attitude. Like I said, I'm not trying to be sneaky. I'm just saying let people come to their own conclusions. If you've led the conversation, you bring it there. So this is going to be won by hundreds of thousands of conversations between people, one-on-one, respectful. There's going to be campaigns. There's going to be get out the vote stuff. There's the signs, by the way, that I have in the back, lawn signs to help display your support for an independent Alberta. They're free to a good home. Be sure not to leave without one. There's going to be flyers. There's going to be ads. But the real way to win this campaign is going to be us. This is different. It's not a party. It's not a leader. It's a concept. It's a future. It's an idea, and it's positive. But we have to communicate that to all of those undecided people out there. And now is the time to do it. We got 4 months. It feels like a long time, but it's going to be short. So I'll leave it at that. I'm going to keep it short because we've had a blessing of an abundance of speakers tonight, and I don't want to take up too much time. And we've got a real treat. Sheila Gunn Reid is here, and there is a person, again, who certainly does not need introduction, from Rebel Media, author of the Independence Blueprint, which is in the back, and that's another thing you must read if you want to be a good advocate. Get Sheila's book. And she will speak for a little while. She's a fantastic, true Albertan patriot, advocate, and incredible journalist. So please, Sheila, come on up and take this mic off me for a bit. Thank you.
Can detach microphone. That's going to be better.
I had no idea how to get up here. Thanks for that great introduction, Cory. Cory is a real expert on the topic of Western independence and the history of Western independence and how to have those really important conversations. Before I get started, let's just thank the people from Let's Talk Alberta for their hard, relentless work to bring these events together. It's not easy. And then I just want to acknowledge the freedom fighters in the crowd, of course. In front of me, working hard, is Freedom Convoy leader. I don't know if it's legally appropriate to call you that, but Freedom Convoy leader and my rebel co-worker, Tamara Lich. And then, of course, we all know Chris Scott of the Whistle Stop. 3 days in jail for selling burgers. And someone who slides into the crowd doesn't necessarily always get noticed, but Rick Strankman is in the crowd. He fought for the rights of farmers, just like my parents, to be able to sell their produce without government intervention. So thank you, Rick. And like Cory, I don't want to speak too long, but I am the editor-in-chief at Rebel News. I'm the author of a book called Independence Blueprint, What Alberta Can Learn from Quebec. And I also work on a project with Cory Morgan called Alberta Fact Check. You can find it at albertafactcheck.com. We wake up every morning very, very early before we start our regular jobs, and we go through the media from the night before, and we just get writing and debunk the lies from the mainstream media about the independence movement, because there are many. And they come from what I call the darkest heart of Laurentia. You know, Ottawa, Toronto, and Montreal, and then, you know, Laurentia West, Vancouver. But I want to tell you a little bit about me, because I come by my separatism quite honestly. I am a third generation that I know of Western separatist. But unlike a lot of people, my earliest childhood memory forms my independence sentiment. So a lot of people, their earliest childhood memory might be coloring or birthday party or something like that. But for me, and I remember it so vividly, my parents were sitting at the kitchen table, worried. And I didn't know at the time what they were quite worried about, but you know, you're a little kid and you can sort of sense it. But it was money, because my parents were farmers. I own the family farm now that's been in the family since 1903. But my dad worked in the oil patch. And like so many farmers, right? Seeding is during spring breakup. When it gets mucky in the fall, well, you're harvesting. And my parents had bought some farm equipment, and then my dad lost his job thanks to the National Energy Program. And then interest rates skyrocketed. And my parents were very worried about losing the family farm that had been with us, you know, at that point for 90 years. And I don't think my experience is unique. Who knows what jingle mail is? Rick does. The mail in Alberta during the National Energy Program was said to jingle with the keys of people sending their house keys back to the bank. And that was 40 some odd years ago. What has changed since then? People are still on the verge of losing everything. We still have this abundance of natural resources under our feet, and yet we're still now, 4+ decades later, not allowed to do anything with it, thanks to the federal government. We should be like Monaco. Instead, we're poor, or at least not as wealthy as we should be. So I want to talk a little bit to you about the hard numbers, because I think we have to deal with the facts honestly, right? We need to know what's ahead of us so that we can overcome these things. And part of that started for me researching what Quebec did, because Quebec has done this twice. They're allowed to have these conversations. They don't get told to shut up. So I started researching how the separatist movement became normalized in Quebec. And they started doing the homework that I don't think we've fully done yet. I know it's starting now in the background, but I'll talk a little bit about the numbers, and then I'll talk about what I learned while I was writing my book. It's at the back. If you want one, I'll sign them for you later. The political class keeps pretending Alberta independence is some sort of fringe emotional outburst and that it's brand new. But fringe movements don't mobilize 7,000 volunteers over the course of a bitterly cold winter. And they don't continue growing despite non-stop attacks from politicians, the media elites, activists, judges, and federal bureaucrats. I think something very real is happening, and I think we have what could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in front of us. Wanting a referendum is not extremism. Referendums are not extremist. In fact, they're democratic. And Quebec held 2 of them. Nobody treated Quebecers like they were dangerous. But Alberta, we're not even allowed to discuss the possibility of charting our own course. And that double standard is fueling us, isn't it? It's part of the problem. Paternalism is creating separatists every day. Every time they lecture us, our support grows. Every time the Eastern media mocks us, support grows. Every time our industries are punished, while Ottawa talks about national unity, our support grows. And support is growing too. It's reflecting that. I should tell you that I am the point person at a third-party advertiser group called Act for Alberta. And one of the first things we did is we started doing polling, and we started doing research, and we started doing focus groups, because we wanted to know, how do we convince the people who are in the middle? How do we convince the people who don't want to leave, but also hate the federal government as much as we do? So recent polling puts Alberta's independent support at roughly 36% province-wide. Now that might seem low, but about 6 weeks ago, our polling data showed that it was 30%. So that should give you some hope. Now, inside conservative coalitions, support is even stronger. And this is a very important stat right now. Roughly 60%, according to our polling data, and we didn't just hire some Looney Tune polling company, we hired Main Street, which does a lot of polling for the Liberals, because we wanted the most conservative number, so we knew how hard we had to work. Roughly 60% of UCP supporters say that they would support Alberta independence or are at least open to it. Among federal conservatives, it's roughly the same number. So that means that this is not a fringe movement among conservatives. It's embedded in the conservative grassroots itself. And I think conservatives need to be realistic about the political math here. You cannot build a successful sovereignty movement by declaring war on the UCP premier. I know a lot of you are dissatisfied with her, but she has over 90% support inside that party, and 60% of those UCP members are your allies in this movement. So if you go too hard in one direction or too vitriolic, and I'm just telling you the numbers, so you can disagree with me, but this is what the numbers show, that will be political self-sabotage for everybody involved. And I don't just mean the independence movement, I mean also the vitriol directed back at the independence movement from inside the UCP establishment, because they are shooting inside their own tent. So they should be careful too. The UCP has the same volunteers as you guys do. They have the same organizers as you guys do. They have the same activist network. And if the sovereignty movement descends into infighting and factional warfare, ordinary Albertans, those soft people that we identified, they're going to walk away from it. Most people are not looking for chaos. When we polled them, they were concerned about the chaos that happens after the vote. So we need to offer them calm and a plan. And Quebec understood that. They didn't have purity tests inside their sovereignty movement. They didn't have endless internal battles. Here's a number that I think should give you some hope, though, because I gave you some hard numbers there. According to Polling Commission 4, Act for Alberta, 46% of First Nations respondents said that they would support Alberta independence in a referendum. That's nearly half. That's actually more than the general Alberta population writ large, and of course that makes sense. If you have ever seen a group of people so wronged by the status quo, it's our First Nations friends. But what this means is a growing number of people from very different backgrounds increasingly believe decisions affecting Alberta should be made closer to home and not in Ottawa. So I wrote Independence Blueprint because I got tired of one particular lie. Alberta independence is impossible because nobody knows what happens next. That's absolutely not true. Quebec already built a roadmap, and that's what a lot of people forget. Quebec didn't nearly leave Canada in 1995 because people got emotional. Quebec nearly left because they were prepared. And I think we can be more prepared than them. After Meech Lake Accord collapsed, Quebec launched a commission to study sovereignty seriously. They talked about the mechanics of what came next: debt, currency, pensions, trade, citizenship, borders, federal assets like the national parks, and Indigenous governance. They had a commission on the future of Quebec, 18 different traveling commissions, and they were different. Some were dedicated to seniors issues. Some were dedicated to young people. They held 435 public meetings. More than 55,000 people participated in those commission hearings. Ordinary people were just wrestling with what sovereignty meant, and they were doing it all in public. They were airing it all out. And it insulated them from a lot of what we call Project Fear from the Federalists. They talked about the kind of country that they wanted, what powers would end up locally, and what would be the limits on their own federalism. And that made their movement critical, and it made it credible, and it made it part of the cultural ethos there. In Quebec, it's very normal to have separatist business people, separatist artists, separatist musicians. We don't have that yet. Do we have a big separatist businessman in Alberta? Like in Quebec, they have Pierre-Carl Pelado. We don't have that because we haven't sort of normalized the conversation yet through these very legitimate processes. I don't want Albertans relying on slogans or social media myths about sovereignty. I wanted people to see the work that Quebec had already done. So that's why I went back to those commission documents, the hearings, the studies, and those public consultation reports. I published them all at the back of my book, so you can read them for yourself. They're not filtered through Ottawa. They're not filtered through the CBC. It's all the original documents. And once you read those Quebec documents, I hope you realize something important. The same questions we're asking we're asking here in Alberta, and they're not radical, they're just normal mechanics. And we need to learn from that, because anger and frustration here is not going to be enough. A sovereignty movement only becomes credible when it can answer practical questions calmly and confidently. And that's what Cory's talking about, those conversations person to person. Now, we need to be realistic. Does that mean Alberta independence is inevitable? But we're seeing the trend line change, and quickly. Support is rising. Our data shows that it's rising particularly among younger Albertans, which makes this not a protest movement of people who've lived through the National Energy Program. And I think Ottawa can just look in the mirror if they're wondering how it happened. They've blocked every pipeline. They ignored every equalization fight. Think about every federal attack on our economy and the smug lectures we get from those Laurentians. All of it has accumulated on us in this room. So that leaves so many of us no longer asking, how do we fix Canada? We're asking, why should we continue participating in this arrangement at all anymore? And that's not a tantrum. That's a constitutional question that we are allowed to ask. And whether Alberta ultimately stays in Canada or not, one thing is already true. What's happening here in this room will change the relationship as we know it. We're no longer quietly willing to subsidize a federation that increasingly works against our economic interests and political influence. That's why I wrote my book. I don't want to tell you what to choose. I just want you to have the facts. I know what I choose. But I want to make sure that if Albertans ever do choose sovereignty, that they do it informed, prepared, serious, and we will be impossible for these people to dismiss. I want Albertans who are dedicated to sovereignty to be an army of the informed, so that you can go and have those conversations that Cory encourages us to have. I want us to do the homework. I want us to be able to answer every single scare tactic these people throw at us with facts. And judging by the momentum we are seeing right now, I think that moment is arising. Thank you. Who's next?
Who's going to be next, Shane?
Yeah, I don't know.
Rick?
Rick? Who's next?
Rick.
Okay, perfect.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Is it Rick Strankman?
Yeah.
Are we inviting Rick Strankman up? Am I introducing Rick Strankman? What a delight. We're putting him on the spot. He says no. He's got nothing? Come on, Rick. For those of you who don't know Rick Strankman, he was a Wild Rose MLA, and he went to jail with his good friend Jim Ness, fighting for the rights of farmers to be able to sell their produce without intervention from the government to whomever they saw fit. And I should tell you, he was one of the first people I spoke to when I started with Rebel News 11 years ago. I just could not bear to see what was happening to the coal industry. I knew it was destroying the town of Hanna, Alberta. I knew people would end up underwater in their houses. And that is a fight we're seeing today again in the Crow's Nest Pass. And I just wanted to understand it. So I drove to Hanna and I talked to Rick, and it's been a love affair ever since, hasn't it, buddy? Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, Rick.
This is. I want to be with the people because I'm only one of you. Wow. This is an honor to speak in front of Albertans. I've always tried to simply be an Albertan. I don't believe I have any extra qualifications. You heard my friend Sheila describe that. She did drive to Hannah and visited with me too. I've learned, I think it was 2 to 5 years after that, I learned actually why she came there was for her own purposes, to understand how she could influence and be a positive influence to Albertans. One of my great mentors is my sidekick, my cellmate, Jim Ness, right over there, who is strong, and he's influenced me to my Christian beliefs going forward. And I think we're on the path to glory. I think we're on the path to history. You all are watching history. You're watching history being made. My history is 1995 with Jim and others. We hauled grain into the U.S. to protest unequal federal legislation, i.e. the Canadian Wheat Board, which is federal legislation, but it treats Canadians differently. Those in the Western region were treated unfairly under the belief that they were supporting Mother England, so they kept the prices of grain down to support Mother England, which was an honorable cause in 1943, but 80 years later, it was not. And so we started off on that adventure in 1995, 96. In 2002, myself with my cellmate there went to jail. We went to the Lethbridge Correctional Center for a little vacation for some period of time. And then 10 years later, actually, lots of reflection in that time, I had already moved on in my life and became, through hard work and my mouth, I guess, got elected as a Wild Rose MLA, another movement in Alberta, another movement going forward. And that was in May, and in August, Jim and I and the 12 other guys were given a pardon by our Prime Minister. And a little bit of a historical or a trivia thing to that is at a photo op one time, I happened to be standing next to then Prime Minister Harper, and I said, you know, Stephen, I was so glad that you gave us a pardon the way you did, unlike the way you did it to Louis Riel. They hung him, and then 75 years later, they gave him a pardon. And Mr. Harper said he'd use that. I haven't heard him. But so, you know, and then one of the other tumultuous times in my life was when our present Premier crossed the floor and vacated her representative role. And I've recently tried to communicate with her on that I believe presently she is now as well vacating her representative role. I was involved, not necessarily involved, but I was growing up in Alberta, I'm a lifetime Albertan, and watching Mr. Ralph Klein, who said that in the political world, he felt that you have to find out where there's a parade and get in front of it, get in front of the people. And I think that's what's happening in this province right now. Sheila gave the statistics, the numbers, which are correct. I would assume them to be. But it's the start of a movement. I was involved in the movement to try and bring federal change to the Canadian Wheat Board. I was involved in the movement of growing Wild Rose to a party. Under Danielle Smith, the first time we got elected, there was 17 MLAs. Trivia, not a lot of people know that after the floor crossing, Wild Rose came back with then 21 MLAs. Even though the NDP government, the vote was not, ladies and gentlemen, it was not for the NDP. The vote was against the corruption of the Wild Rose crossing the floor with the PCs. The PCs were actually devastated in the election. They had 11 members, 2 of which shed the banner. 1 crossed the floor, and I don't know exactly the other history, but they were left with 9. The party was decimated. Wild Rose had 21. The movement that you came here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, to witness was growing. And I believe we're on the path to doing the right thing. So I would relinquish the mic to whoever you guys think is honorable enough to hold it. Oh, I see a young gentleman. It's an honor, actually, to introduce the young gentleman that's coming up here next, because he came to this province to work on an oil rig, and that didn't work out so well, so he ended up managing a cafe, and he self-describes himself sometimes as a burger flipper. So, but I enjoy as a farmer, and that's I don't have any other hobbies. I like aviation and farming, but I consider myself a farmer, and I'd like to introduce you tonight, ladies and gentlemen, to the owner of the Whistle Stop Cafe, Mr. Chris Scott.
Did I put you on the spot, right?
You did.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rick. Apparently, I put Rick on the spot a little bit, but I think he's used to it because he was an elected representative. So this is not the first time he's been sprung with something by Albertans, I'm assuming. I do want to correct him on one thing, though. I had a fantastic time on the rigs. I absolutely loved it. I miss it. Let me just get this out of the way. It was very profitable. I was prosperous. The reason that I left that industry was because I was actually tired of the government passing boneheaded legislation and bad policy that affected my industry to the point where my outlook for work that year or 2 or 4 years was bleak. So in 2019, I said, I'm going to do something different, and I bought a restaurant, campground, gas station, and that was July 2019. Well, in March 2020, the government did the most intrusive thing they could have possibly done to almost all of the industries in Alberta, and I found myself staring them down at the end of that year. So yeah, the oil patch, the rigs, the energy industry was good to me. I just wanted to do something different. And it's interesting how that all worked out. I was upset at one point because of the issues we face in energy in Alberta, because of the legislation that was passed and things like that. You know, why is this happening? Woe is me. This is silly, and it should be like this. So I buy a restaurant. Then the same thing happens. And, you know, in hindsight, when you look back, you realize that all of those little things in your life that you thought were hurdles or tripping you up, they actually brought you to exactly where you are today, made you the person you are today. So if any of those things hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here right now. I wouldn't be speaking to you. I probably wouldn't have been politically active. I would have no idea really who I was as a Canadian, what the Constitution meant, why certain laws were bad, what Western alienation and inequity was, and how to deal with it. I wouldn't know any of those things. And actually, going back even further, my dream was not actually to work rigs, believe it or not. When I was a kid, all I wanted to do was fly fighter jets. That's it. I wanted to fly CF-18s for the Canadian Air Force. That was my dream. I was in Air Cadets. We flew all the time. All I wanted to do was be a pilot. And I was doing my ground school when I was 15 years old, I guess. Doing quite well. I started doing my flying hours, and I got to the point where I had applied to Royal Military College to enlist as an officer. And I had to go for a Transport Canada medical, and my doctor said, yeah, it's not happening. Your color vision is way too poor. You can never hold a commercial pilot's license. And I was absolutely devastated. Like beyond belief. All I ever wanted to do was fly airplanes. Thinking back, you know, that was it was about 23 years before the government closed my business. If I had been in the forces then, I would have been one of the people that were 2 years from pensioning out, faced with a choice imposed on me by government over what I had to do with my own body to protect everybody. And so even something like that, I realized there was a reason why I was born with poor color vision. There was a reason why I decided to get out of energy and into serving delicious hamburgers, which are some of the best hamburgers around. I encourage you to try them at the Whistle Stop Cafe. There's a reason why I went through that whole year complying my way out of it, exhausting my savings, and coming to the point where I had to make a decision. And all of those things have put me right here today. So when I'm asked by people, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? You know, from a person who's an Alberta independence-minded individual, they might ask me, Chris, what happens if we can't get an independent Alberta? Or on the other hand, if somebody wants to stay, they say, Chris, what happens if we leave Canada and we lose all these things? And the answer is the same for both. The answer is whatever happens is supposed to happen. I refer to it as, this is a big P plan, capital P plan by a capital G God. And who am I to argue with these things? And that really is I can see that in my own life looking back, and it gives me hope for the future. Now, on to the topic at hand. Why is Let's Talk Alberta doing what we're doing? What is the whole point of getting Albertans into a room to talk about things? Well, in my opinion, Alberta is about to face a question or a series of questions that are more important than any questions that we've been asked in the past. We participated in many elections, a few referendums, and no question has been so consequential as the one we're going to be asked. The question is about Alberta's sovereignty in a kind of a roundabout way. Now, whatever your position is on that, whichever side of the fence you're on, it doesn't really matter. The pathway is the same. If we know we're going to have to make really important consequential decisions, and for most of us in this room, it's not going to be us that suffer the consequences or reap the benefits as much as our kids are. Right? It's certainly our kids are going to feel whichever result we have. If we're going into that, we need to know the facts. We need to be able to talk openly in public spaces about these things. We need to hear from each other. We need to listen to each other, what our concerns are. And you know what? That's what brought us to this point right now. Western alienation, the biggest part of it was that we haven't been listened to. We feel we haven't been listened to. We feel that our values are not effectively conveyed in Parliament and then manifest in legislation that benefits the West. They just didn't listen. We can't do that anymore. We cannot continue to go through our lives just completely writing off and discounting those who have differing opinions than us. We have to get back to a place where we sit in a coffee shop, maybe a coffee shop called the Whistle Stop Cafe that has the best coffee in Alberta, by the way. And we have these conversations. We hear from each other. And I mean, we actually listen. What is it that you're concerned about with Alberta being able to self-determine? Because in my opinion, I believe that Alberta being able to self-determine is an absolutely wonderful thing. It's an amazing opportunity and a blessing that we could just reach out and grab, and who wouldn't want that? Well, maybe somebody, like in the comments there, somebody mentioned something about people living with disabilities. They're concerned about the way the Alberta government is currently handling that. Other people, they're concerned about things like our currency. Yet other people are concerned about our military. Everyone has concerns about what's going on around them, and if we take the time to listen to them and have proper discussions, we can find out what's the best course of action. That's what we have to do right now. That's what Let's Talk Alberta is about. I am aware that the majority of people that attend these events are probably like-minded to me. They probably share the opinion that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable. We've been inviting and encouraging and pleading with people that disagree to us to attend these meetings and tell me, Tell me why you disagree with me. Why is it that you want to continue with the status quo? What is it about Alberta remaining in Confederation that is attractive to you? And why do you believe that our future will be better if we stay? I need to hear people's rationale, because if I'm wrong and I don't take the time to listen to the people that disagree with me, I might make the wrong choice in October, right? Like, I'm pretty confident that my opinion and the path that I see for Alberta is probably the best one. But if I don't take the time to listen to other people, and we don't take the time to listen to other people, and this goes for both sides, what a wasted opportunity in October. What a damn shame if we don't take the time to talk to each other and know why we need to choose one option or the other. You know, Cory Morgan mentioned our veterans. You know, he talks about how our veterans, they didn't fight for a flag. They didn't fight for that flag back there. They didn't fight for Canada specifically. They fought for freedom. They fought so that we would have opportunity to do things. And one of the opportunities that I believe we were given through their sacrifice was the opportunity to maintain our freedom. We don't have to go out in the trenches. Well, most of us don't. Some still do. But the majority of us don't have to go and do those things to get our freedom. All we have to do is participate in a process that's out in front of us. And what an amazing blessing that is. That this country, Canada, has given us the blessing of being able to speak openly about these things, talk to each other, and then participate in democracy, even if the end result is a province seceding from Confederation. We don't have to fight. We don't have to struggle. We don't have to toil. We have to stand outside maybe in the cold and talk to people. We have to have events like this where we're sacrificing family time. But that's pretty much it. It's our time we're giving up. And this is not something to be taken lightly. This is a very, very important and critically consequential thing. And we have to stop thinking about it as if it's just some passing fancy. This is not. This is about the self-determination of 5.3 million people. For the first time in history, Alberta and Albertans have an opportunity to start real negotiations from a place of strength with leverage. We have an opportunity for the first time in Canadian history, and no Canadian has had this opportunity, by the way, to dictate the terms under which people may govern us. Even Canada hasn't done that. Our constitution that we have right now was a piece of legislation written, drafted, and passed in British Parliament in the 1867 or whatever, that was imposed on the Dominion of Canada as our system of governance. It wasn't people like you and me getting in a room and saying, hey, if you want to govern us, if you want to interfere with our rights from time to time, as is required in any civilized society, these are the parameters. This is what we want our government to look like. Would anybody in this room choose the Westminster parliamentary system as their form of government? I wouldn't. It's confusing. And I believe it's confusing on purpose because people don't want to take the time to learn about it. And when you're confused, you lose. And that's what we're seeing in Canada. We're seeing a de-evolution of the values that Canada was. And it's because people just don't participate. I firmly believe that the vast majority of Canadians do not agree that if somebody reads a passage from the Old Testament that they should be fined or go to jail. I do not believe that. I do not believe that the majority of Canadians believe that it's appropriate or in the best interest of the nation as a whole to landlock Alberta's resources by making it impossible to build a pipeline or impossible to get oil shipped from a port. That's not in the national interest. But we spent all of this time pretending that somebody else is going to do the hard work that's necessary to fix the path that we're on. I do not agree with that anymore. 6 years ago, I was the guy that would be staying home tonight, probably watching TV instead of coming to an event like this, because somebody else was going to fix it. It was going to be the Jason Kennys or the Rick Strankmans or the Danielle Smiths that were going to fix these things for us. Well, how has that worked out for us? These are all things we need to talk about. And we need to talk about them openly and honestly, even if it's something as uncomfortable as admitting that we have failed in our civic duty to make sure that the ship that we're on is on the correct course. But the first step to solving a problem is admitting you have a problem, right? We have a civics problem. We have a problem with an understanding of what Canada is, what the Constitution is, what Alberta's position with the Confederation is, why all these things are troubling for Western Canada. And now we start learning, we start talking, and we fix it. And lo and behold, we go into a little booth in October, and we have I guess now it's a stack of papers that thick with ballots. One of those ballots is going to be a question about Alberta's future within Confederation, about Alberta independence, about Alberta sovereignty. And no, it's not a constitutionally binding question with some teeth that's going to result in negotiating the terms with Ottawa. But what it's going to do is send a clear signal, one way or the other, that Albertans want this option. So when you look at that ballot, when you read those questions, I think the questions are something like, do you agree that Alberta should remain in Canada? Or B, do you agree that the government of Alberta should begin the legal process to have a binding referendum on independence at some time in the future? Something like that. Option A, status quo. Option B, something different. And I want you, when you're there, just stop for a second and understand what it means that you're standing there and you have the option and the ability and the opportunity and the blessing to answer that question. Because there are places in this world where people, they fought wars, sometimes for hundreds of years, to be able to self-determine, to be able to answer the question or demand self-determination. Since 1995, I think there's, fact check me here please, but I think it's something like 38 new nations have formed. 38. This is not a new thing. Of those 38, not all of them was peaceful. Not all of them required a sacrifice of your time and your willingness to learn. Some of those nations, some of those people being able to self-determine meant that their sons and daughters had to go and die. And we don't have to do that. That's why I believe that this conversation is so critically important. And we start getting in rooms and hashing this out. And if you disagree with me, with something I'm saying, if you disagree with my position, my personal position that Alberta independence is necessary and inevitable, you have to be willing to engage with me and tell me why. Make sure that I have the opportunity to hear why I should be on your team as well. That's why this is called Let's Talk Alberta, not let's advocate for a specific outcome. Yes, I want a specific outcome, but I'm more responsible than to assume that we should just barrel forth to that. I know that we need to talk to each other. And in my personal experience, I will proudly say that most of the people that have engaged with me on this topic, and they have specific concerns about either remaining with the status quo or pursuing Alberta sovereignty, almost all of their objections, I'm able to turn them around and bring those into a rationale or a reason why Alberta should be independent. And that is a really good reason to have a conversation. But the only way you can do that is if you take the time to learn, you attend as many events as you can, and you're willing to have those difficult conversations. We've been taught from the time we were little that it's impolite to talk about politics and religion, correct? Politics affects your life from before you're born till after you're dead. Religion affects the entirety of the rest of eternity. I think they're two very important topics. So I would politely ask that we talk about these things, Alberta, and we come to the best conclusions. Thank you very much. So we're going to do things a little bit differently today. Generally after every time after we finish our sharing our opinions with you, we take a little bit of a break. But this time, what we're going to do is we're going to pass around these fancy buckets because these events do cost money. I hate to even ask, but if you can, and if you believe in this kind of work, please pitch in what you can. If you can't or you don't want to, that's absolutely fine. You can still have a coffee or a cookie for free. And also, while that bucket's going around, my friend Ben, who I would have never met if it hadn't been for all of these things, by the way, he's going to play a couple of songs for us during this intermission. So just stick around for a moment, let the buckets go around, enjoy some music from Ben, and then we'll be back in probably about 15 minutes now for a Q&A. Thanks.
good with the mic?
And by the way, we want to say a big thanks to Max over here. We call him Max the Sound Man. He runs around to these things all over the province, and he runs a sound, and he runs a podcast and all that kind of stuff. So we just love Max. Here's the first song I was telling you about. And when I was told I was a songwriter and I could write a song about this, the first thing that came into my mind was this thought about my Alberta roots and how deep they run. So this one's called My Alberta Roots Run Deep. Go ahead, Max. The only life I know goes back 100 years, steeped in deep traditions of sweat and blood and tears. The value of hard work, common sense and hope and truth, revelation, freedom, the value of our youth. What makes me want to hold on to what I know is right. In the face of opposition, stand my ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep. It's in my blood, in my bones, it gets stronger every day. And when somebody tries to move it and tear it all away, I just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots run deep. Well, it's living on the land, watching life come and go, working hard and playing hard in sunshine and in snow. We don't really ask for much, 'cause we know that God provides and has given us all the things we need to enjoy this life and thrive. What makes us want to hold on to what we know is right, and in the face of opposition, stand our ground and fight. My Alberta roots run deep. It's in my blood, in my bones, it gets stronger every day. And when somebody tries to move it and tear it all away, but just draw a line there in the sand, stand my ground and say, my Alberta roots, you can't hide it, they define us. They made us who we are today, and when life's this good, you just don't throw it away. 'Cause our Alberta roots run deep. You can't pull them out or dig them up. They grow deeper every day. And when somebody tries to move in and tear it all away, we just draw a line there in the sand, stand our ground and say, our Alberta roots run deep. Run deep. Oh, yeah. Thank you guys so much. We're going to open the dance floor now. This one's kind of a bit fun tune. This one, a couple of weeks later, I was thinking about this whole idea. I was running around with these guys. I was learning about our history. I never knew the history of our province, going all the way back to '05. And so I just had to write a song about that one called Land of Big Sky and Big Dreams. No, we didn't ask to be brought here back in 1905. We was just fine, spending our time to mind our own business and thrive. But the East had different ideas. We was too good a deal to pass up. They saw what we had and they wanted it bad, so they signed us up there on the spot. They said, we'll call you Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. You do the work, we'll take the pay. That makes us the ultimate team. When we realized that we was a peasant, this arrangement just couldn't go far. They said, you feed the cow, we may allow you to take a small sip from the jar. But things just got worse as the time flew. The feds kept us stomping our necks. They take all our pay, keep our assets at bay. The whole thing's become a big wreck. Say goodbye to old Alberta. Ain't not that much is left of our dreams. We're told what to think, election day stinks, taking out all of our means. We've had it, we're rattled, we're just gonna move on and take back what's ours from the start. We ride a new horse and we chart a new course. Thank God when we're finally free. Let's raise a glass to old Alberta, land of big sky and big dreams. We're finally free to be who we should be and rid of the liberal scheme. So let's break the chains and breathe free again. Thank God we'll be finally free. Thank you guys so much. We believe it. That's right.
Okay. So we're going to intermission mode. We're just going to put the chairs on the tables, make sure everything's okay. And we'll see you in about 5 minutes to make sure everything's okay. So we'll be back in a second.
I'll get this out of the way first. Take 4.
I need 2 chairs additional.
I got 3 chairs there, we need 1 more.
Okay, well. So, and also, if you have questions, please, if you have questions, we have a format here at Talk Alberta. Have questions, it's very important for you guys to talk on the microphone.
Yes.
Otherwise, people will absolutely not hear what's on the stream.
Jasper?
So.
So they'll line up here and you just adjust the microphone and get the going along. Okay, if everybody would, that has questions would come line up here, that's perfect.
Let's kick ass and chew bubble gum.
Keep your mouth really close to the microphone and state your name.
Okay, I'm Danielle, and it's less of a question, more of a comment. So you had mentioned about disability. So I actually am on disability.
Hold on.
And
Go ahead, ma'am.
okay. It's good? Okay. Anyways, I just would say the whole disability program change. Nobody really knows what it's looking like. People are already freaking out and panicking, but they want to push more people with disabilities to work. Not full-time, a lot of us can't do full-time, but they want to see people working, and I think that's actually a really positive thing. But one thing I would just encourage everyone in the community, I guess, is if we're going to be part of this movement and you want to see it succeed, if you know people who have disabilities around you, and you have or you're in the position to hire them or employ them, please do. Like, give us opportunities, help us be part of the community, help us to contribute, because that's how things are going to move forward. Like, the reason government has so much control over everything is because people have abdicated their responsibilities. And so this is my appeal to everybody, you know, and just so you know, there are separatist artists, so if y'all are looking for someone to spice up the flag a little bit, you know. But thank you very much, I really appreciate you guys.
Well, and we really appreciate that, and I appreciate the offer. So if you don't mind, just connect with my friend Shane before you leave, and I think we could probably get you some work doing some art for Let's Talk Alberta. So thank you. Where are you at, Shane? Oh, he might be outside having a relaxing cigarette. You know, on that note, there's something I'd like to mention. There are a lot of people who are concerned about what an independent Alberta may mean for them in particular. A lot of times it's people who they depend on federal entitlements, for example, maybe old age security or a pension, well, pension's not it's not an entitlement, you own it, but you get the drift, right? Some people depend on things that the federal government provides right now. I am a very strong advocate for if Alberta decides that we want to self-determine, under no circumstances can we leave people behind. So anyone who's concerned that day one of an independent Alberta, they'll lose what they're getting from the federal government, my stance on that, and I hope people would join me in pursuing this, is that nobody gets left behind. And anybody that's receiving something from the federal government right now that's sustaining them, that tab must be picked up by Alberta. It would be immoral and irresponsible to do anything less.
Audrey, I heard today that the carbon capture, or the industrial carbon tax that Danielle Smith has agreed to will amount to 6.5%. And that will be applied to all our groceries, and even though everybody says it's not, our gas, everything, because they have to get that money from somewhere. I also heard that Saskatchewan does not pay any carbon tax. Do you guys know why?
Well, I can speak a little bit to Saskatchewan, and then I think I'll let Cory take the other part of that. Saskatchewan, their energy is provided by a Crown corporation, and there's one level of government cannot tax another level of government in Canada. So because it's the Saskatchewan government, a Crown corporation, that supplies energy to the people of Saskatchewan, they can't tax them. And so Saskatchewan just stood up and said, no, we're not doing it. And there's really nothing the federal government can do about it. This is a kind of a mini sovereignty issue. Saskatchewan has stood up for their people and taken a stance. And according to the Constitution, there's really not a heck of a lot the federal government can do. So that's why Saskatchewan can do it. If Alberta was to try and do something like that, it would require our government either asking or compelling privately owned corporations to ignore federal laws, and they can't do that, right? So that's the difference between Alberta and Saskatchewan. Regarding the carbon tax, I'll turn it over to Cory.
Sure, carbon taxes, and yes, so that was a concession that Premier Smith has offered that's frustrated a lot of people for a promise of a possibility of a pipeline that might get down there by our great-great-grandchildren's grandchildren. But carbon taxes are terrible. They, as you pointed out, they make the cost of everything rise. There's different speculation on how much, whether it's 6% or what. It's based on a per ton thing, and it's the industrial carbon tax. But it applies to all fuels inputs. It's going to hit fertilizers, it's going to hit producers, and that does trickle down. The businesses aren't going to absorb this. They have to raise their prices. We always ultimately pay it. And they don't do anything for the environment. We aren't going to stop consuming heat. We aren't going to stop using grain dryers. We aren't going to stop using trucks and driving things around. BC has had the highest provincial carbon tax going for over a decade, and their emissions continued to grow. So if emissions indeed are the problem to deal with, that's another debatable area. Carbon taxes aren't an effective way to do it. All they do is make things more expensive for us. So I don't know how else to answer, except that I would hope in an independent Alberta we're a little wiser with our environmental policies and not chasing around tax grabs such as that tend only to be an economic burden rather than actually helping the environment.
Yeah, and I have another question about data centers. So if Danielle Smith agrees to all these data centers, is there a way for an independent Alberta to stop them?
I don't want to stop private enterprise that is legally set up in our province, even if some people have some challenges with it. There's debates about the data centers. It's certainly something new that's coming along, and people are concerned about it, the amount of energy it uses, potential water use and consumption. But I don't think it's necessarily all as bad as some people are pointing out as well. It is another industry that perhaps could contribute to us in general. If they've been approved and they're operating, I don't think it would be wise of us to retroactively try to shut down businesses that came in on good faith and began operating in Alberta. But because they are new and people are wondering about it, we should be asking questions about it and making sure they aren't causing more damage than they're providing in benefit to people around. Those are high-intensity operations that don't hire a heck of a lot of people. So if it's something like that, we do want to make sure that there's benefits coming to Albertans in general then for that. You know, it's not something that's going to give a bunch of jobs. But those are things that we would have to consider down the road and where they're sitting at. But I would avoid trying to say that we're going to crack down on businesses retroactively as an independent nation, because that's really going to make business support greater for us, because it certainly shows even more instability than we're offering.
And also, when you start shutting down something that is not something you like, that's no different than what we're trying to escape right now. We got to be careful and support, but also not take and do the thumbs down. That's a thumbs down approach. I may not like it, but I ain't the only toad in the puddle.
Before you go, I just want to say one thing. So in oil and gas, every day you deal with some sort of a risk. There's some sort of a hazard. And you have to decide, is the benefit that you're going to receive by accepting that hazard and mitigating it as best you can worth the hazard itself? Data center, I think, is no different. I think there's a number of things that have to be addressed. There's issues that we have to think about and things that we have to demand, like protections and guardrails for people. But we also have to consider the other side of it. This is the same thing as oil and gas. There's people in this country, in this province, that want to completely shut down oil and gas, get rid of all plastics. Well, okay, if you can present a case for doing that, and you can explain how the benefit to doing that is greater than the benefits we currently receive from using oil and gas and plastics, then we should be open to it. But it's not just a one-sided conversation. It requires some deliberation and some, what do we have to do? I think we have to talk about it.
Talk Alberta. I've had a few people confront me with this question, so I thought maybe the panel would be a good place to put this. We all know that the governments are corrupt, and ultimate power gives ultimate corruption. When we become our own country, how do we keep our new government from becoming corrupt as it is now?
You're not going to like the answer. We have to be involved. But the opportunity in a new nation is that the new nation, the people of the new nation, get to set the ground rules. They get to have conferences and constitutional conventions and talk about these things, and they need to identify, perhaps we look at other constitutions, other countries, and what has been successful in preventing corruption, what hasn't been successful, and then we get to decide, what is our constitution going to look like? Are we going to maybe, for example, constitutionally enshrine like a Doge style thing, where there's a Department of Government Efficiency, where every year the people get to see exactly what the government's spending money on? I mean, what would that do for corruption? This is the opportunity, and I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination that it's going to be any better. I'm not. But what I will say is, right now, there are things that we would like to change in our governance that we are unable to, and we have the opportunity now to do so. That requires engagement, civic engagement, and if we seize that opportunity and actually do the work, then we certainly can make things better in the future, unlike what we can do on a grand scale right now.
I'll just expand a little further on kind of where Chris was going, though. When we get to that point of independence, that also means then we obviously have hit an incredible record amount of citizen engagement. People must have gotten up, taken part, campaigned, taken the reins, voted, and got there. So the thing that we have to do is what Chris is saying, the responsibility is still ours. We have an incredible base to begin with at that point. We can't take our hands off the steering wheel then. It is up to us. It's when the populace becomes apathetic is when the government gets away with a whole lot of things. So we got to remember our job is never done. That's the part Chris is kind of saying I think we might not want to hear. But you got to be vigilant right to the end, because even the best system of the world, unfortunately, there's always going to be some opportunists trying to take advantage of us with it. And we are the best safeguards for our own safety from government.
Okay, I want to go back a little bit and speak about a couple of things that the previous person had asked about data centers. One being their environmental impact. Okay, the hypocrisy of our government, basically, the heat island effect and the amount of energy that it uses and the ill effects from that. These things should not be allowed within 2 miles or 2 kilometers of a town, just no different than a gas well. They're not safe. Now, when you look at the carbon capture and storage utilization they're looking at in Cold Lake, that's a problem. They had an issue in Mississippi where they tried capturing carbon, and they had a release into the atmosphere, a basically leak in the system, and it poisoned the whole area. So where's the green, where's the environmental impact of all of this stuff, and why are we not addressing it directly with the government and saying, no, this is not green, this is not environmentally friendly, and you could turn up poisoning the whole area that they're looking at this carbon capture and storage. So what would the new Alberta look like in addressing these kind of issues?
Well, again, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't tell you exactly what it will be, but I can tell you that as an Albertan in an independent nation, you would have the ability to self-determine. Now, for the nuances of all the things you mentioned, I don't know exactly what the impact of a data center is, and that's why we have specific environmental thresholds that have to be met for new infrastructure in the province, and that's partially a provincial thing. It's also partially in federal jurisdiction. The comment about a gas well, I would have a gas well in my backyard. I have no problem with any of that. There are inherent risks and dangers to just about everything that human beings do, but again, we have to weigh the benefits to the risk, and is the risk acceptable? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Now, I can't speak to the data centers because I haven't done a deep dive into exactly how much heat, how much water, all these things. I've heard some things, I've read some things on the internet, but I would encourage anyone that has concerns about these things to learn as much as you can about them, not just on Facebook and not from memes and not I heard from this person, but actually learn about them, and then you can be involved in those processes. Specifically, in your municipal planning meetings, you can attend those, you can ask questions, you can bring up concerns, you can be involved in those types of ways. But from the perspective of somebody who wants Alberta to be able to self-determine, I would just say this. It's an opportunity that Albertans, for the first time in history, would be able to control their wealth and resources and chart their own course forward in all of these matters without being governed by people making rules, living thousands of kilometers away that don't suffer the consequences. That's the core of it for me.
I know. Just as a quick follow-up on that, they had a data center built in a town, and the people within a year have been getting very sick and just completely ridiculous. So that's why I was saying, just as an FYI, these data centers should not be close to an urban population in any way, shape, or form. And same with the storage capture and utilization or of CO2.
You bring up some good points, and we're actually seeing that from some of the renewable green initiatives. There's people that they're developing psychological problems being close to a wind turbine. Like, there are things that we do, we impact, and we don't fully understand, and then we have to be able to look back and say, hey, we did this right or we did this wrong, and then make changes. And I think this is one of those, a good example of something like that.
Ernie Medding, Trochu, Alberta. The biggest thing that bothers me is equalization payments. And the way I understand it, Alberta probably throws in about 30 to 50 billion dollars any given year that all goes basically down east of Ottawa. If Alberta comes independent, we get to keep that money. Is that correct? I'd like to have a little more explanation on how equalization payments work that a lot of other people don't, or where that money really comes from, and that it would be available in an independent Alberta.
Sure. So there is a common misconception that Alberta writes a check to the federal government and sends billions of dollars a year. The average over the last 15 years, minusing the COVID years, because those kind of were a black swan event, is 17 to 27 billion dollars is what the net output. I'm not talking about the total amount that goes out. I'm talking about the amount that goes out minus the amount that comes back is about 17 to 27 billion. So what happens right now is the federal government collects taxes on behalf of Alberta. So when we pay our taxes, we pay to the Receiver General. They collect our personal income tax, our federal tax, they collect GST, and then Alberta collects corporate tax. So the federal government takes all that money, and then they send it back to Alberta in the form of transfers, cash transfers, or equivalent services. So the difference is between 17 and 27 billion dollars. And in independent Alberta, why in the world would we do that? Like, why would we subsidize other people's ability to pursue ideological blunders and kneecap their own prosperity while we do the work and pay for it ourselves? So that's a very important topic. Equalization, we had a referendum on that, and I think it was 62.5% of Albertans said that they did not want to participate in the equalization scheme anymore. And the only way to do that without constitutional amendment or a very huge voice in Ottawa is to self-determine. And the only way to be self-determined is to have a successful referendum on Alberta independence.
Hi, Rhea Brady. I'm from Delia. And there's so many different independence groups right now and so many different individuals. How are we going to unite everybody, or at least get us closer to, what Quebec is, where it's more of a united front as opposed to all the splinter groups?
Yeah, well, we've got a very unique campaign starting up. So as I kind of said, there's no central party that's going to be driving this. And as we're finding, there's no central organization. Some are larger than others. And this could either be something that's really good for a campaign or something really horrible. I think most of it, I like what it's kind of novel. It's unique in that we can take different bites of it. So I'll use a moment to point out, what I started just out of my own frustration. I started a third-party advertising group. Now we've got well over a dozen of them out there that are registered with Elections Alberta. I suspect there are probably going to be a couple dozen by the end of the campaign of varying size. Ours is just specializing in signage, billboards, and a visible presence on the ground, and some AI digital advertising. We're not going to do anything beyond that. But hopefully what we can do is own that section of the campaign. And other groups then can focus more on brochures or door knocking coordination or radio or television advertising, lots of the other elements of the campaign. It makes it difficult because they're disparate and we could be missing gaps in some areas or duplicating each other's efforts in some spots. But what we kind of saw, and I don't want to get too far into the weeds with that, but we let the movement get dominated by one group that had some issues that went on and then dropped the ball and didn't do a damn thing for the last month when we should have been campaigning. So if we've got a dozen other little groups working on the ground, this will keep moving even if a couple fall by the wayside. I don't think they'll quite unite, but we can certainly make sure we're not stepping on each other's toes and that we're all moving towards the same end. And we can complement each other, I think. So sometimes working separately can be a little better for us. And people can volunteer for multiple groups and support multiple groups, or they can, not support others. So it's interesting. It's uncharted waters how well it'll work. I'm not too sure. But we're not going to have a unity conference with a dozen TPAs getting together in the same room, though hopefully they're working somewhat together just to keep to the same goals.
We have a couple of cameras, so if you don't want to be in a camera in the back, you can fill in a form and you can have your questions. And one of the questions is more like a comment. What's your comment on elections, when the elections already is being called, when not all the votes are being counted yet?
I don't like that. So as an Albertan, as a Western Canadian, it really irks me that as we're watching the news, we see that our election has been called before our ballot boxes even leave the polling station. That's a problem for me. The last federal election, I believe it was called at 8:09 or something like that, and our ballot stations closed at 8 p.m. So our ballots weren't even counted. Now that's not a conservative or a liberal or an NDP thing. It doesn't matter what political stripe you are. You should be disappointed that your vote didn't matter. It didn't have an outcome in the election. And yes, there are situations where we could have some small changes made from our ballot boxes being open, but it's very rare. As a matter of fact, if you look at the last few federal elections, the entirety of Western Canada voted in a very similar fashion, and the entire eastern part of Canada voted in a similar fashion, and it always defers to the east. Now, I'm not saying that the people in the east or central Canada shouldn't be able to self-determine and choose their government, by all means. But why should an entire group be dominated by one voting bloc who doesn't necessarily share their same values, isn't necessarily the same kind of social fabric, and aren't necessarily pursuing the same goals? I believe that we should each be able to determine our future and be governed by people who reflect our values individually rather than in one collective group where only one group is happy.
Just a quick shot. I just want to use an old quote. They say in a democracy, you get the government you deserve. Unfortunately, in the Canadian system, we get the government that Toronto deserves, and that's part of what we want to change.
Hi there, how's it going? My name's Dana. My question is around Indigenous relations specifically. So we all know what's been going on with the chiefs, trying to basically stop our ability to even ask the question in the first place. And so we all get one vote. And so I'm not really concerned about what they're doing. I'm more interested in what can we do to bridge the gap for any of the Indigenous who are on the fence, to really show that we are in this boat together and that we want all of Alberta residents to be prosperous. And so I'm also curious what you guys have been doing or what conversations you've been having around Indigenous and how we can bridge the gap, what kind of conversations we can be having, and how we can really strengthen our relationships. Thank you.
Well, as for what we're doing, I'll touch on what Let's Talk Alberta is not enough. Honestly, that's a very difficult thing to do. I find that a lot of the communities, like our First Nations communities, that just don't allow the conversation to happen there. So that's an issue. It's a very difficult one to overcome. It is important to point out and recognize that in this conversation, it is generally the people who benefit, sometimes benefit greatly from the status quo, who are opposed to change. And why would they want change if they're benefiting greatly? But as Sheila mentioned earlier, in some polling that was done, it was 46% of First Nations people polled wanted a change from the status quo. Like, that means that they're ready for this conversation. So from the perspective of Let's Talk Alberta, it's difficult, and I would like to have more conversations with First Nations groups across Alberta. We're finding that tremendously difficult. But for what we can do collectively, I would say that we start talking to people. Talk to your First Nations friends. Open the conversation. Be bold about it. Find out, what is it about either position that particular person appreciates or wants, and then just hash it out with them. As individuals, we're much more effective in creating change than we are as organizations like this, right? Because we can get a really good turnout tonight, by the way. Thank you for coming. We can get a room full of people where we're talking to you and engaging with you, but it kind of becomes your responsibility to go out there and each talk to 10 more people. So talk to your First Nations friends, bring the conversation to them, and maybe encourage them, hey, why don't you guys attend these meetings, or maybe we'll get into one of your communities and have a discussion with you and go at it from that way. But it is an important thing to do, and it's very frustrating that a small group of people who are benefiting from the current system are kind of preventing the questions and the conversations from happening, but I think we'll get past it. It's just going to take a little more work than we thought previously.
And I think it's also a very fair assessment that I think Keith Wilson was also stating that a large portion of the people who were supporting the referendum, the signature collection for state free were Native, particularly Métis, right?
Hi guys, my name's Brad Wick. I grew up just down the road here. I'm pretty basic Albertan, I think. Hard-working guy, not so young as I once was, but like Chris, we were trucking and then oil patch stuff and heavy duty and et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, this whole movement for me, it kind of started out listening and then the dots got connected and you start hearing the corruption, and it's very obvious, especially with our current debacle of a prime minister. It's daily. You hear everywhere except mainstream media. Of course, you have to go dig for information. And Chris, you're right. Just don't look at the memes or at Facebook. And I heard it from a guy. You can dig in, and there's people that actually like to be fact checked. And I appreciate those folks because they're like, go ahead, fact check me, and you listen to their statistics and do your own fact checking. They're pretty much on the money with Carney. Over 90% invested in the U.S. That's where his loyalty lies, not with our country. It's quite pathetic. Anyway, I took the time to be a canvasser, and I talked to a lot of people. And you're absolutely right. It's one conversation at a time. Very enlightening. I had 2 or 3 of my friends here tonight ask if I would come up and ask a couple of questions. Some of it I can't answer because I believe it's speculation where we're going. But once we get through this first referendum and then we'll get the right selection on our ballots and move forward. So the one question is, what's the tic-tac-toe? What's the steps thereafter? And what do we become? Obviously, we want out of this Westminster system and into something similar to the U.S., but I can't answer that. So that would be question 1, I guess. What's that look like? What's that path look like in a successful path forward? Second thing, which I hate to admit, I haven't been on Let's Talk Alberta website lately, but is there an FAQ? So all the things that we're collecting here tonight, does that end up there? And can people go there to maybe see some of the answers that they're shy to ask questions about? And I guess the third thing that another friend of mine brought up tonight is who's going to lead this thing after we become successful?
Well, those are fantastic questions. I'm going to answer the one about Let's Talk Alberta website first, because that's the only thing I remember at the moment, but I'll remember the other things by the time I'm done. We don't specifically have a FAQ section. I set up the website myself in my spare time because we needed a website, because I needed something to put on a billboard ad we were going to put out, and it's a very basic website. But what I did do is I incorporated a little chat bot in there. And that chat bot, when you ask it a question, basically any of the questions you've asked tonight, it will actually go and it reviews the information that I've compiled on my website. So it goes, looks at my blogs, it looks at some other independence-minded organizations, and it will answer questions. And it's fairly effective, but again, it's AI run by a data center consuming hundreds of thousands of gallons of water somewhere. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. You'll have to fact check that as well. Your first question was about what are we going to be, what kind of government are we going to have? Right?
How to get there. Yeah.
The tic-tac-toe.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Essentially.
This is the most amazing part about this journey that Alberta is on. Upon a successful referendum on Alberta sovereignty or on self-determination, that would lead to negotiations with the federal government that, according to the Clarity Act, may result in secession. If it results in secession, Alberta has an opportunity to lay the groundwork for what the new nation would look like. So I have my ideas what I want the Constitution to look like. I believe that we should be a constitutional republic representative with a representative government. I believe that we should have a constitution that enshrines the values that make Alberta what it is, that appreciate the sanctity of life, the supremacy of God, those types of things. But I'm just one person. So it would be an opportunity for Albertans to collectively decide how we're going to be governed, what our laws are going to be, what our judiciary is going to look like, all of those things. And I need to remind everyone, and you can fact check me on this, Canadians have never done that. Never, not once. Our Constitution, our original Constitution, was an act of British Parliament passed in England, imposed on the Dominion of Canada, that told us how we were going to be governed, period. That wasn't us that decided it. When the Constitution was repatriated in 1982 by Pierre Elliott Trudeau and his government, they built the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which did include participation from First Ministers, from Premiers, one of whom is the Honourable Brian Peckford, who I have the privilege of calling a friend now. And the original constitutional document, the British North America Act, didn't really change all that much. So it wasn't like a group of people like us said, hey, this is what we want our government to look like, this is how we're going to self-determine, this is what we want our judiciary to look like. It was still something, a carryover imposed on us. So this is an opportunity for the first time in Canadian history for a group of people here to decide on those things. And I'm sorry, but I forgot the last question. Oh, who's going to lead us? Who do you want to lead us? Now, I don't know. I really don't know. That would require, so first we need our Constitution. That tells us what kind of government we're going to have. Once we know what kind of government we're going to have, then we would hold elections, and we would decide who's going to lead us at that point.
Yeah, I guess throughout the conversations that I've had with a lot of people, and they start out with, well, what about our borders? What about this? What about that? And I go down the same path that you folks have mentioned earlier. The pioneers that came here, they built all that, and we're already here, and all that's built, and we just need to tweak things. We're pretty lucky we don't have to get in the trenches. We don't have to recruit soldiers, although we do need to, and treat them better than we are now, that's for sure. But I think if we get to the point, when we get to the point of leadership, it's that gray area between now and then that needs some momentum and some more conversation. Thanks for the energy and the hope.
This is not a question, it's so I didn't have to yell from the back of the room. Can you explain about Keith Wilson's Transition Council? Because that will help maybe answer some of those. What's after?
So you're talking about Keith Wilson's Transition Council, which is another I don't even know if that was a third-party advertiser. I think there's another one that Tanya Clemens was going to be part of, and the Transition Council is more of a think tank. So it's Keith Wilson, if you're not familiar with him, he's a lawyer. He is the one who debated Jason Kenney a couple of times. He's been very outspoken on independence and does a lot of great videos and events and things such as that. So he's formed a Transition Council, which is pulling together a lot of people, academics, journalists, lawyers, all of those sorts, similar to what Quebec did, as Sheila writes in her book, getting some of that groundwork and basis done, and they're going to put out a number of white papers to address a lot of the issues and those gaps that are sitting right now. As was mentioned, a lot of the whataboutism, whether it's borders or prisons or you name it, to help lay out a bit more of a framework and a basis that people can reference when you get to all those questions. Again, we can't convert people by bringing a book that's that thick, covering every possible eventuality of independence. We have to have those shorter conversations in bites, but the more we educate ourselves on those possibilities, we can give better answers to it. So I think that, and I can't speak for Keith's thing, but that's kind of the impression I get out of what he's forming right now, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of those papers coming out.
So Cory mentioned books. You guys have an incredible opportunity tonight. I keep using that word opportunity. So my friend Sheila and my friend Ben, they both wrote some really good books on a lot of that touch on a lot of the things that we're being asked about tonight. So if you are the other Ben.
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't you?
It wasn't me.
It was my friend Benoit Trudeau. Yeah.
I can draw the pictures.
Well, you should draw the pictures. Anyway, if you're serious about wanting to learn about these things and have these questions answered, do not leave here without both of those books, grab a copy of Sheila's book, grab a copy of Ben's book. Sheila's book is written from the perspective of an Albertan that's seen all of these things and understands all too well about the inequities between Western and Eastern Canada and some of the solutions for those things. Ben writes his book from the perspective of somebody who was very, very active in Quebec politics, like right in the middle of it. He was with the ADQ during the 1995 referendum, so he knows what Quebec has done, where they're going, what the feeling of sovereignty is there. So if you're an individual that wants to know more, or perhaps you're a journalist that's exploring why Alberta is pursuing this path, do not leave here without a copy of each one of those books, and make sure you read them. Most of your questions will be asked or answered.
Speaking of books, the guy beside you's got a couple that he's put out too, so check them out on Amazon as well.
I was waiting for him to cue to talk about the Sovereigntist Handbook, but I didn't get the cue yet.
Just wanted to say, before you guys leave it, you're filing out, I wanted to make sure that everybody that wanted a lawn sign does get one. We still got about 20, 25 of them there, so if you will display it, please take it.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, guys, for showing up to Trochu. Ben, I didn't know you were from around here, so that's pretty cool. For everybody else, I'm John Sador. Lots of people know who I am here. Some people don't. And at the end of this, if you're interested, pull out your phone. I'm going to give you my contact information and where I live. If this is of interest to you, please take my information and we'll go from there. But the question that I want to pose to each of you is the power of community organization, local community organization, and how important that is in forming essentially a decentralized movement so that we in our communities are strong. And something like the parade season coming up and camping season and these types of ideas, the only way for us to execute here in this room to bring Alberta independence is actually to organize ourselves. So maybe some commentary on the importance of doing this in our local communities, please.
No, that's absolutely right. Like someone said, someone real famous, I don't know who he is, said, "No man is an island." And honestly, we cannot do this all by ourselves. And this is something that I'm learning is like Chris said, we learn to get up off the couch and actually get involved. And don't be afraid when you hear that word involved, because that doesn't mean you have to run for office. That's the last thing that this country needs, is me to run for office. I could screw you up worse than you is already. But we got to take a look at what our skills and our strengths and our giftings are. If you're great at talking, talk. If you're great at singing, sing. But whatever you do, find people that you can connect with and get involved with, but also, constituency associations, local. Just the big one, like you said, is one-on-one. Talk to those that you know. And if you don't know how to do that, or several pages out of Cory's book, you got to get that book. I'll plug it for him. He won't, but I will. It's called the Sovereigntist Handbook. It actually gives you ideas on how to hold those conversations.
Just kind of going further, I know some people were frustrated, but one of the most brilliant things we saw in this last 4 months was the petitioning campaign. It was amazing. The amount of people who got together, went out in adverse conditions, got those signatures, sat on highways, went door to door, did everything. And it wasn't wasted, even if they weren't counted and even if the question they were looking for didn't get there, because what happened was they networked. They developed relationships with their other community members that are still lasting today. Those are the relationships that are going to keep this organization going, whether it's still with Stay Free or APP or whether it's with others. And that sort of gathering in the community, that this was grown because of that petitioning process, and it wouldn't have happened that way. So it was almost, not purposeful on the part of the government, but it actually created a very good step to allow an organization to get people together, to bond, to learn to campaign together, and now they're going to take that experience and those friendships and those relationships and those community building that you're speaking of, and bring that forward for those next steps as we go towards independence. And don't just look at it as a task. That's what a lot of people discovered when they were petitioning. It can actually be fun. It could be satisfying. It's a community. It's very healthy for you. It really is, and it's beneficial. So I just wanted to put that in. I think that's kind of what you're getting at too. This is how we'll do it, and those communities we build are what are going to last and keep everything good.
So for you all, I live here in Trochu. I live on Railway Avenue, Robin Blue Door 409. Feel free to knock on the door and say hi. I will also give you my number if anybody has their phone out. But please text me and get involved if this is your first meeting here. I'm your source of contact, or one of them. There are many. But yeah, just get involved. It's going to be fun. Parades will be fun. Parks will be fun. And together we can do this. So. And thank you for coming to Trochu, honestly. My number, if there is anybody who wants to take it, 403-550-1947. In 1947, India gained their freedom from the crown.
Well, it looks like that's all we have for questions, which is great because it's 9:30, which means I'm going to get to bed at a decent hour tonight. So before we go, I just want to reiterate, there are some very valuable books back there. They're worth way more than what they're being sold for. Please grab one on your way out. Cory's book, he doesn't have any here right now, but is it? He has the newest version of the Sovereigntist Handbook out at the Sovereigntist Handbook? I think it's just Sovereigntist. Just sovereigntisthandbook.com. You can pick it up there. That's one of the few books on this subject that I've listened to twice, cover to cover. It's awesome. Thank you to all the volunteers who made this possible. Thank you for the hall donation. We really appreciate it. Please keep an eye on letstalkalberta.com for upcoming events. Tomorrow we're going to be in Vulcan.
I will be there streaming too.
Yeah, Max will be there streaming. Thank you to Max for doing the sound, and thank you all for coming out and participating in a very important future conversation for Alberta.
So yeah, so tomorrow at 7 p.m. we'll be in Vulcan. So when you're going to join us, that would be fantastic. And thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow. And see you in the bed then.
Just wanted to tell you that falls on the same day.
It happens. That's all right. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to... Thank you for letting me know. Well, there we go, folks. Another successful Let's Talk Alberta event. This one was in Trochu, Alberta. Oh, look at that. One of Cory Morgan's signs back there. This was a great event. We had some guests here from Toronto, from CBC, from the Fifth Estate, interested in what's going on in Alberta. They want to know why Alberta is pursuing independence. Why are we having this referendum? Why are people asking to have a conversation about Alberta's future? So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. They're going to talk to a few more people here in Alberta, and they're going to put something together to be released in the early part of October. So it was great to have some guests. It was awesome to have my friend Sheila show up and my friend Rick Strankman, both who are well versed in Alberta politics, and they had some really good things to say. So please leave some comments and let me know what you thought of this live stream. Let me know what you think we can do better, and we'll do our best to accommodate. And yeah, don't forget to check out letstalkalberta.com for the next events. Tomorrow we're going to be in Vulcan. Please join us there. Bring your questions, your opposition to my opinions, your challenges for me, and I'm excited to have the conversation with you. Let's talk Alberta.
Meow. Meow.